Hello and welcome to this edition of Phillies Talk Podcast. It's the longest running independent Phillies podcast on the internet. My name is Rich Baxter, and I'm joined today with my good friend and co-host on the show, Mr. Matt Veasey. How are you, Matt?
Hey there, Rich. How are you?
All right, not bad. Despite there being an ongoing lockout, already the first week of March under our belts almost, March 6th, as we're doing this show. And I'll be honest with you, I tried 2 dry runs of a show, recording them by myself on the software from Anchor.fm, and both didn't get recorded. So I know we last talked,
Fingers
and
crossed. See what
fingers
happens.
crossed this one gets recorded. I'm sure it is because it's a different software, Zoom. But I was going to invite you in, and I remember you saying that on the last show, let's wait till there's an agreement between the clubs and let's do one then. So I
We
was
could be waiting a
waiting.
while, Rich. It seems like we
Yeah,
might be waiting quite a while for waiting for an agreement.
yeah, it's insane almost. Started on December 2nd, 2021 now, and we're months into it. Opening day was supposed to be on March 31st. Again, I was going to trying to go down to spring training this year. Had reserved a week that's coming up real soon around St. Patty's Day. And again, I'm going to be turned away.
Well, you can always go down there, Rich. They got some great beaches down there, some nice restaurants and bars. So either that or you can just delay your trip because I'm sure they're going to have a spring training. Whether it's going to be abbreviated. So maybe they're saying, I heard something from MLB saying that they needed a month to get the players ready, which would be like 4 weeks. They could always shorten that, I guess to 2 or 3 weeks, but we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe they'll just choose to let everybody do their training up at their main ballparks up here in across the country. But my guess is they'll have some type of spring training. They'll throw a bone, down to those communities that usually support them every spring. So I would imagine you'll still have a chance if you really want to go down. It's just a question of when.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I've heard. I've heard, depending on when the settlement is, if it starts to get warmer up north, we may see home clubs playing round robin type of games with New York, maybe the Yankees, Mets, Phillies, Orioles, that kind of thing, getting together at their home clubs. But, that would be good for the people in the cities. They don't have to travel down to Florida or out to Arizona, but we'll have to see. There's been so many wacky proposals back and forth, especially in the past couple of days. It's been hard to keep up with.
Yeah, and this is why I really haven't been keeping up with it because it's at this point like they just had another meeting today, Sunday afternoon. Minor, minor tweaks to what's been going on. They met for about an hour and a half today. Negotiators between Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association. The MLB came down again in their what they're looking for on this pre-arbitration pool, which is going to be a brand new thing. This year they came down to 80 million. I believe it's when this all started out, they were looking for over 100 million. Major League Baseball was, down at like 20 million or something like that. So that was probably the biggest place where they were worlds apart. But still, this was a brand new concept, this pre-arbitration pool. So I think that this is not going to be the holdup. They'll keep tweaking it till they find a number, that both sides are comfortable with. And as far as the competitive balance tax, the CBT penalties, the CBT is going to go up. And I think that the players wanted to hold on to a 12-team playoff. The owners want to go to a 14-team playoff. One of the things that is key to that is that ESPN and Major League Baseball have a deal already in place, television rights deal, where if there's a 14-team postseason, then MLB gets $100 million to whack up among the 30 teams. If it's only at 12 teams, then it's 85 million. So that's $15 million. So it's something. I mean, money always matters. So I think that the players are probably, is my take on things I've been seeing, is that the players will exchange that 14-team playoff, meaning they'll go for it in exchange for a higher competitive balance tax threshold. The players wanted it at, I think the players wanted it at something like, $250 million by 2024. And the owners, were something like $30 million, $40 million lower than that. So I think the players will probably get closer to what they want as far as a CBT increase. And then the owners will get their 14-team playoff, and everybody will be happy in that regard. I don't see anything here with the numbers I'm seeing thrown around and the actual issues that there are. I don't see any way that they can't get a deal. It's just a question of, man, they're just going to keep going back and forth until they find the numbers that, each side is comfortable living with for the next 5 years.
Yeah, and to me, it didn't seem initially like they were that far apart. We're looking at a graphic here. If you're watching the show on the YouTube channel, 2021 minimum salary is $570,500. MLB was offering $700,000 with a $10,000 increase per year. MLB PA want $725,000 with a $20,000 per year increase. So that's kind of close. Really $25,000 and then 10 each year. Competitive balance tax, as you said, players wanted to go up. MLB wants to keep it down. I think it's good when it's down. Obviously, the players want to push that ceiling up for themselves, probably, and push a lot of money into that sort of tax. But I don't know. I'm thinking, just off the top of my head, the 220 sounds about right.
Well, one of the main reasons that the players want that up, Rich, is it's not simply a matter of, hey, we want more money. It's what they want is a fair percentage of what Major League Baseball is making. This is a $10 billion industry, and the players' share, the overall contractual share, has actually dropped over the last 3 years. So while the dollar amount has gone up, so has what the owners have brought into the game over the last 3 years. The players' percentage of that revenue has gone down over 3 years. And the players believe, and most of the reputable economic experts, if you will, that I've read as I try to get deeper into this issue, agree with the players actually that that one of the big culprits of their percentage being lower is that competitive balance tax threshold. Teams just aren't willing to. Sometimes they aren't even willing to approach that CBT threshold. If they're contenders, they stay below it in the hopes of adding a player or two at the trade deadline. So, and a lot of teams just stay below a period. I mean, they're just not spending money for whatever their particular reasons are, but there are competitive teams that would spend more money if the CBT were higher. Instead of, if it was 250 million, in other words, instead of 220 million, you'd have more teams, contending teams, spending up to or near that limit, and the players' share would then be higher, without really hurting the owner's bottom line too much. So it's really a matter of what this is the idea. The players are looking for what they consider to be a fair percentage of the money that's coming into the game. And that percentage, their percentage of the money coming into the game, has gone down in each of the last 3 years. So they're trying to rectify that. The other issue is they're trying to get more money to younger players. Traditionally, as we all know, common sense will dictate by the time a player reaches the big leagues, in the overwhelming majority of the cases, they're going to be in their low 20s, usually 23, 24, by the time they really get in and establish themselves. And then you've got a number of years until free agency. So most players, again, not all, but most players are hitting free agency when they're like 28, 29, even 30. When that happens, player only has so many more bankable, years in their prime. So with the players, and this has become a younger man's game. A lot of teams are starting to introduce these really quality superstar talent type players, if you will, into their, not every team, but a lot of the teams are starting to integrate them into their big league lineup at 21, 22, 23. And these are players who are producing big time for the teams at the major league minimum. So what the Major League Baseball Players Association is trying to do is to try to get some more money for these younger players who are excelling, on the field. So there are different mechanisms to make that happen. The biggest one that they've come up with so far is this pool, this money pool, and that's where the player that it would go to a certain percentage of younger or first year players, and the Major League Baseball Players Association is, as of today, is at $80 million for that pool, and the MLB is, I guess, somewhere around, they've come up to maybe somewhere around 25, 30 million for that pool. So they still have a gap, but like I said, this is a whole new program. The other issue is the draft. They're now talking about, for the first time, having an amateur draft lottery. And the Major League Baseball is, and this looks like it's something's going to happen because it looks like both sides are interested, is that similar to, say, the NHL or the NBA, where they have a lottery among the bottom teams to decide who's going to have the first pick. This is supposed to be an anti-tanking thing. We don't want teams to come in the 30th place, 29th place among the MLB clubs because they're going after a particular player that's supposed to be coming out of the draft, or the top 3 are supposed to be great picks this year. So the draft lottery, Major League Baseball, as of today, is at a 5-team draft lottery, and the Players Association is at 6. They want 6 teams in that draft lottery. So, these are, you hear those numbers though, Rich. That's 5 picks for MLB, 6 for the MLBPA. So that's, it's one off. That can't be a major hold up in the end when we come down to brass tacks, if you will, on this deal. So all of these things, the competitive balance tax issue, the number of teams in a draft lottery, this new pool, pre-arbitration pool that's being formed. These things they're negotiable, and they're negotiating them. And every time they sit down now, it seems like, each side, one side throws one thing out, the other side throws another thing out, and the numbers get a little closer each time. And it just seems like to be this really slow, grinding, feel it out. How far are you willing to go? How far will you come down? How far will you come up? And that's what's taken us so long, because whenever this gets put in place, it's going to be in place for 5 years, because that's going to be the likely length of this deal. And secondly, it's going to establish precedents. So, 5 years from now, when they go to do this all again, this isn't going to be it won't be the first time around for a pre-arbitration pool. It won't be the first time around for CBT, raises. It won't be the first time around for the draft pick compensation. So there's a number of issues that are, you would think that they could sit down in one day, and go back and forth and back and forth, but that's not the issue when you have, 30 owners that in the end have to vote on this thing, and however many members of the MLB PA are going to ultimately have to vote for the deal. They're the negotiators are trying to get set up the best possible deal for each of their sides before they're willing to sign off on or present to their ownership group or to the Players Association, the full membership, a final, this is what we've come up with as a final deal. So nothing was settled today after an hour and a half. Another meeting that I know of has not been set. If fans want to get a really good, in-depth, detailed, but presentable presentation on everything that happened today and where we all are, MLB Network is going to have a show later this evening. I'm not sure what time that deal starts, but probably like 6 or 7 o'clock. And they usually replay them during the night as well. But we check your listings and check social media with MLB Network. They're going to have Greg Amsinger is going to be on, Joel Sherman, Mark Vinesand, and they're going to recap everything that happened today down there in Manhattan. And my guess is that they'll be back at the bargaining table quickly. Hopefully that's tomorrow, Monday. Certainly, they seem to be meeting at least every other day now at this point. So the only problem, Rich, is we're losing games. With every day that passes, we're losing time off of the spring training, Grapefruit League, Cactus League schedules. We're losing time off of the MLB regular season. We've already lost 2 series. If they don't have a deal in the next few days, it's only a matter of time where they're going to have to throw out more regular season games. So, we'll see what happens, but they seem to be confusing issues. I think that they're getting closer and closer with each meeting. And for fans that really would like to get into some more of the details, maybe broken down a little bit better for them, MLB Network is the place to be tonight.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll be tuning in later myself. And as you said, the players wanting a little more piece of the pie. And on the screen here for YouTube video watchers is the minimum salaries for other leagues. NBA is out of control at $925,258 as their minimum. NHL, a nice round number, $750,000, and the NFL at $660,000. MLB's living under rules from 5 years ago plus. They're at $570,000, $500,000, and we know that's going to go up. It's probably going to be in that $7 to $725 area. But I did a little research, even from the Players Association page. The average salary, as they reported on their own page, is $4.17 million as of opening day 2021. So everybody isn't earning that bottom tier dollar figure. And, if it's 700,000, if it's 800,000, that's still a lot of money. When's the last time we both earned that? Of course, we're not players on a field, but
Never. Well, as I've said many times about this, Rich, you can't really equate like what you made and I made and what say Mike Trout makes. I mean, this is who you really want to look at with when you're talking about like what does Mike Trout make or what does Bryce Harper make and so on. You want to look at then what does Kevin Costner make in a year? What does Meryl Streep make in a year? I mean, these are entertainers, and nobody is going to go down to the ballpark to watch Rich Baxter and Matt Veasey play baseball. Nobody. But a lot of people are going to go out and watch Mike Trout and Bryce Harper. So this is an entertainment dollar thing. These are the entertainers. These are the people who put the fannies in the seats. They sell the merchandise. They sell to the TV networks. These are the people that people want to see and hear and talk about when they go on all these social media feeds and apps that are out there nowadays. So I don't begrudge players getting their fair share of the profits of the game. When you have the dollars coming into the game and they're big dollars. I mean, you have 30 teams in a $10 billion industry. There are a lot of teams in baseball that are worth $1 billion. There are any number of them, and I would factor that most of them are approaching the $1 billion mark. And when you have that, certainly at least between $500 million and $1 billion, when you have that kind of money in there, and the players' share of that money has gone down for 3 straight years, then I see the players' argument. It's not like, Matt Veasey and Rich Baxter trying to get money from their employers. We're talking about employers who are making billions of dollars. So the players are the entertainment. There is no game without the players. If you took the next, whatever there are, 400, 40-man roster, 30, teams, 1,200 players, if you erase them and you take the next 1,200 best baseball players in the world, you're not going to get them all, because some of them are going to go to foreign countries. Some of them are going to be not eligible. They'll be in college or in the minor leagues or whatever. It won't be ready. But if you took 1,200 other players, the theoretical, next best maybe 500 to 800 players, and plus, nobody's going to go see them, Rich. I mean, you might have a few people who are going to go out to the ballpark, but if you want to see attendance drop, you try to pull that. Everybody knows the game is played by the best players in the world in Major League Baseball. So they should never try any kind of deal with replacement players or scab players again, like they were doing spring training back in '95. Nobody who wants to have any kind of credibility should ever say, fire them all and let's bring in the next best players, because that's just dumb. So what needs to happen is, somewhere along the line here, baseball needs to come up with a deal that gives the players a fair share of the big profits that they're making in this game. And they'll get there. I believe they'll get there, and hopefully it won't be too much longer.
Yeah, that's for sure. We'll have to keep monitoring it. We'll be watching just like you are at home. And I know we were talking just a little bit before we started, Matt. I saw you had changed your Twitter feed to Sixers Bell from Phillies Bell, and I'm there with you. I'm enjoying the season, the Sixers, the Flyers. So far, the void has been filled for me. Missing baseball, but I can get by without it. And I don't know if your audio
You there?
fell out.
You got me?
There you go.
Major League Baseball, this is another thing I'm saying that MLB has to understand, is the times that they're working in. It's not 1994, 95 anymore. We now have, while we had it in its infancy back then, you now have the internet integrated into the world. You now have, it's not just analog television and cable television anymore. You have, people watching television on apps on their laptops. You have things like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, all these streaming services, and the entertainment world is. There are a tremendous number more choices. I can watch, and I do. I started at about 12 years ago now. I've started following the English Premier League, soccer. I can watch all those games now, or a lot of them, especially bigger games. I couldn't even get them on the TV in the United States 12 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, when Major League Baseball was last on strike, lockout, whatever, 94, 95. So Major League Baseball, when the collective bargaining agreement, the previous one, expired in December of 2021, Major League Baseball and the MLBPA had not come to a new agreement. So MLB made the choice to lock the players out, to basically shut the game down until there was a new CBA in place. And then they went all through the holidays, all through December, and then beyond it into the new year, all into most of January, where nobody approached either one. Now, once they finally started talking, one of the big things that the players said was, hey, you locked us out. You could have been talking to us for the last 2 months. Well, then the goofball MLB commissioner Rob Manfred counters with, well, the phone, works on both ends. You could have picked it up to call us. Well, you locked the players out, Rob. You, the owners, locked the players. The players didn't go on strike. They didn't stop the game. Would they have if there was no CBA and they were just going to go into the season the way things were? Who knows? But we never got there. The league made the decision to shut the game down, and then didn't approach the MLBPA about talks until we were up against spring training camps supposed to open. So there's no, when I look at social media, when I'm following everything that I was following, I didn't see any sympathy at all for Major League Baseball. I understand, some parts of the owner's position, but in the end, they shut the game down. The players, I understand most of their position, and I think that they're in the right for a lot of the things that they're fighting for. So at some point, though, both sides of this have to say there's a third side of this entire game that we're not really addressing, which is the fans. We're fans, Rich, and there are tens of millions of us in the United States. Just look at even though the attendance figures may be down across Major League Baseball as a whole, they're not precipitously down. There's still tons of people who go out to watch Major League Baseball games every summer, who tune in on television, who are listening on their radio. The TV contracts are reflecting this. So my issue with my particular Twitter feed was, hey, listen, and I'm only one man, I'm one guy with one little Twitter feed, but I have a few thousand, followers. So I'm like, listen, if everybody did something like this, maybe they would get the message. I don't see anybody else doing anything like this. But my thought was, hey, you know what? You're going to get locked out. You're not going to come up with a deal. You have turned your backs on tens of millions of fans. Well, guess what? I'm turning my back on you until you decide to bring our game back to us. Who cares every day, Rich? Who wants to read every single day about talks and negotiations, and somebody went up 10 million on this and another person went up 5 million on that, another person went down picks on this? Who cares? What do we want? We want you to play ball. That's all the fans really worry about. All this other stuff, for a while I saw a little exchanges on social media of it's the player's fault, it's the owner's fault. Who cares whose fault it is, Rich? I mean, that's where I was getting to. I don't care what does that do for me if I say it's the owner's fault that we're having this issue? Okay, now what? Okay, it's the owner's fault. Now, what does that leave me? Who cares? There's still no baseball. I don't care whose fault it is. Solve the issues, get a CBA in place. That's what you can do for the third wheel in this, third spoke in this wheel, the fans. So here in Philly, as you said, we have some other things that can distract us now. We have a really good basketball team that just made a pretty big deal, that helped themselves become even more of a contender. So I just took my Phillies Bell Twitter feed, and it still can be found at Phillies Bell on Twitter. And I just changed everything, changed the way it looks. I changed the name, the name. You can still find it at Phillies Bell, but the name I called it Sixers Bell. And I changed my little bell that is the logo that's normally Phillies related into a bell with the Sixers in it. And, I'm posting every day Sixers updates, latest news, game reports, all that kind of stuff. So I have locked out MLB and the Philadelphia Phillies. I love the Phillies still. Baseball's still my game. It'll be back once we have a new CBA agreed to. And here and there, I'll pop a little item on there that kind of gives fans an update. This is where we stand. But I'm not going to make it an everyday thing. In general, I have locked out MLB and the MLBPA, and I wish more fan groups, websites, bloggers would do something similar, just to send a message to MLB and the MLBPA that 5 years from now, we don't want to see this crap happening again. Think about us. Think about your fans.
For sure. That's the silent majority out there, the fans that support the game, go to the games, pay those high prices to see a game, parking the whole 9 yards. But, until it returns, then I guess we'll be sitting on the sidelines. But Larry Shank, the former Phillies executive, and I believe he's in some capacity still with the Phillies, like executive for the retired players, perhaps, post today on Twitter that good morning. On this day, 1981, the Phillies president Rollie Carpenter, citing escalating player salaries. Does that ring a bell? Announced to the team and executives in spring training that his family is selling the ball club. The Carpenter family had owned the Phillies since 1943. So on this day, way back in 1981, that was announced that Rollie Carpenter selling the ball club, getting out of the business, quote unquote, of baseball, and sold the team. I wonder if he somehow his family regrets that now that they're probably worth, like you said, $1 billion or so. Not sure. And your audio dropped out again on me.
Everybody has to make their own decisions, Rich, about their business from when they make that decision. I'm sure at the time, Rollie Carpenter looked at things, maybe saw that he's been in the game for decades. His father's had been in the game for decades before that. And he may just said, hey, it's time. Let me cash out, see what kind of deal he can get. He got a nice, for 1981, 82. He got a nice, sale price for the team, and he got out of the game. But you know what? Somebody else got into the game. It wasn't like Rollie Carpenter, for he's saying, oh, player salaries, or, I see them getting higher, and I got to sell the team. Well, guess what? Somebody else bought the team. There was somebody else who wasn't too afraid of it. And you know what? They were able to sell the team. They were able to bring in an ownership group, and you know what? They all made boatloads of money. And when what's going to happen when they sell their particular share in the team, they're going to cash out big time. So, Rollie Carpenter, either he didn't have a lot of vision, which, I would hate to say that about Rollie. I don't know. I'm sure I don't know how astute and a businessman Rollie was. He was born into, most of his money. His father had money. His father had the team. So, but it doesn't sound like a very astute observation when you look into the future. This was a game that was expanding. Of course, they couldn't see at that time things like the internet. They couldn't see things like streaming services. They couldn't see all that expansion of, the ability to deliver the entertainment and to interact with fans. Maybe if he saw all that, maybe if he still had held on to the team for another, 15 years, he would have started to see that and maybe he never would have sold. But he made his choice, when he made it, and I'm sure he got a pretty penny for back in the day.
Yeah, and I think I downgraded the Phillies worth a little bit. It just brought it up on Forbes.com.
See that, $2 billion.
As of last year, yeah, March 2021, 2.05 billion. So it's a cash generating machine right now for the owners, John Middleton and the Buck family.
Well, you have to remember that's a value that's put on the team by an independent source. And Forbes has been doing this for a number of years. So I'm sure that whatever system they put together, whatever formula they use, or whatever resources they use, I'm sure that they're pretty strong resources. And I'm sure that the Phillies' value would be close to $2 billion, if not more than that. But not every team obviously is going to be worth $2 billion. The Phillies are the number 8 team in baseball. So if you get down around the 20th to the 30th teams, then maybe they're only worth, $500 million. But, you hear that, only worth $500 million, so this is the kind of money. it's not that money is in the game right now. It's just that's what your team is worth when you factor in all the different elements of owning a ball club. So that's the cash out value basically. So if Middleton and his remaining partners decided to sell, they could probably get $2 billion, if not more, for the Phillies. So they don't realize that money today. It's not $2 billion sitting in John Middleton's pocket, but it's a real figure. I mean, somebody's going to, at some point, Middleton's probably going to sell. Hopefully, if he does a good job as the owner, that's not for a long time. But there's no doubt that there's a lot of money in the industry. There's at least 10 billion, and that's growing each year as far as annual revenue into the game that the 30 teams are, for the most part, sharing in. So that's the money that the players are looking to each year have a fair share of.
Yeah, and I just scrolled through the list right down to number one. The Yankees at $5.25 billion, and the Dodgers right behind them at $3.57 billion. Red Sox $3.465 billion, and the Cubs $3.36 billion. So a lot of money being thrown around by certain teams. The Giants had a successful season last year. But
now keep in mind, Rich, what I said, it's not like this is money that's being thrown around by these teams.
Right.
It's not like the Cardinals spent $2.4 billion or the Phillies spent $2 billion last year. That's not what this represents. No. This is a market value of the full franchise at this time. If you were to go sell it, you're not going to go sell it. It's like somebody coming to you and saying, this is what your house is worth today. Well, it's nice to know my house is worth that amount, but I'm not selling it today. I don't get that in my pocket today. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, nevertheless, big money for those ball clubs and the owners.
Nobody's getting poor in this game, Rich.
Really. On paper, as Matt just said, it's not like you're going out and selling it, but at that figure, that's a big figure. So,
and it makes you liquid, Rich. I mean, that allows you. I mean, you can do a lot of things even though you don't have that money in your pocket. You can borrow against that. I'm sure you're getting a lot of perks. There's a lot of places that are letting you in. A lot of restaurants that are letting you in. A lot of private jets that are allowing you to lease their services or even own a private jet. I mean, there's a lot of doors that are open to you when you own a franchise that's worth $2 billion or more, considering some of those other teams. So none of these owners are, if anybody's crying poor or trying to cry poor, then they would totally lose my respect. I mean, no baseball owner is poor. Nobody's going into the doghouse. The Atlanta Braves are the only team that has to release their finances every single year. And when they released them last month, they made a pretty good penny last year. Now, granted, they were a World Series champion, multi-time division winner, but still, I mean, that they're not the biggest market in the game, and they made a lot of money. So there's a lot of money. Like I said, I keep throwing that number around. It's a well-established number. This is a $10 billion a year industry as far as revenue goes, and that's only going to increase at this point. So there's plenty of money out there, and it's just a question of divvying it up, giving the players their share of that $10 billion that comes in every year, and then signing a deal that's going to keep some kind of labor peace in place for at least half a decade, so that we don't have to so we can worry about baseball. Rich, that's what we all want. And look what we've dealt with for the last few years, just because of COVID. Our 2020 season was shut down and then sliced into like a third, and then last year we opened up with COVID restrictions. I remember going to a game with my brother early in the season. I believe it was April, could have been May, where we had to be masked. and we're sitting in the stands in our masks. They had reduced capacity at the ballpark. We were sitting in there in our masks, and the mask Nazi was walking up and down the aisles telling you to put your mask on if you were didn't have your mask up when you were not eating food. While we were gobbling down our popcorn, our hot dogs, drinking our beer and all, it was fine to have our mask down and spread our COVID all over the ballpark. But God forbid we left it down to have a little conversation with one another with nobody else within 15 feet of us. God forbid the mask Nazi would be telling you to put your mask up. And that's truth. That's a true story. Yeah. I kept my mask up for the most part, but my brother kept pulling us down. And the mask Nazi got him a couple of times, and they ended up throwing a guy out of the ballpark because he wouldn't put his mask on. So that was a whole bullshit, mess last year. Yeah. And that eased and up as the year went along. By the end of the season, we were open. We didn't have to wear a mask in an outdoor place like the ballpark. You still had to wear it. You were supposed to wear it when you went inside to any of the inside restaurants and all. So we've had to deal with this for 2 straight years when they had a CBA. Now we're going into a third year. Now we're dealing with a lockout, and we just have not enjoyed. This is the 3rd straight spring where we have not enjoyed Grapefruit League play, Cactus League play, spring training trips down to Florida. It just hasn't been as enjoyable. The game hasn't been as free. It's supposed to be an escape, this game. It's supposed to be a love, and that there's been no love. It hasn't always been the game's fault for a couple of years. It was the pandemic's fault, and it was some of the fools who were setting some of the regulations in place for the pandemic. But we're getting past that now, and now the game itself is giving us a hard time. Yeah. So it's very difficult, and what we need really is, as long as nothing else crazy happens. I mean, now we're dealing with a war in Europe, so as long as we can, maybe get this game started and have the season underway, it'll give us a distraction from all that mess. But I mean, it would really be nice, Rich, if a year from now we can be sitting here in the, with spring training underway for a week, like it's supposed to be, spring training games, and ready for baseball, and there's not even a thought of anything like a strike or a lockout, and just worry about baseball. I just can't wait till we get to that point.
Yeah. Back to a normal, quote unquote, existence. And as you said, we just went to 2.5 tough years of going through COVID protocols and, record number of deaths because of it. And now we have a war. We're seeing the other side of humanity now, since we're still alive from the COVID. But you look over there and you say how rough life can be for people in general. So yeah, like you said, we need a diversion from it, not to ignore it, mind you, but our existence over here in America, thankfully, knock on wood, is, apple pie, baseball, and summer.
Except when you go to the gas tank, fill up your gas tank.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's another
drill, baby, drill.
That's another terrible situation that's come up upon us now, and hopefully this can all be solved. But getting back to the field, I'm going to rely on Larry Schenk again, because my Phillies bell, I miss it. I used to pick up a lot of different, anniversaries and things like that, but we'll have to lean on Larry here for a little bit. Alumni
locked
birthday.
Out, Rich. Locked out.
Cookie Rojas, 83 candles. Says alumni birthday wishes. Larry Schenk. He was number 16 on the Phillies, and 4-time All-Star with the Royals during 8 seasons, 70 to 77. I remember the name Cookie Rojas a little bit back in the history of baseball.
Cookie Rojas, when I didn't start following the game till I was 9 years old, 1971. And Cookie Rojas at that time was somewhere else. I remember him playing with the Kansas City Royals. So I'm not sure where he was in 71, if he was with them yet. That's where I remember him from. And I remember people talked about him as having been with the Phillies, but those 1960s Phillies, who I had a lot of friends as I was growing up. I ended up playing ball as an adult with guys who were a little bit older than me, who did know those 1960s Phillies, that maybe guys who were like 10 years older than me. And I have no memory of Cookie Rojas and Richie Allen when he was Richie Allen, and Jim Bunning, when he was in all-star, form here. So those guys, I have no memory of them, but I remember Cookie Rojas as a player. I remember the glasses. I remember the whole look, but he was a Kansas City Royal by that time, probably in his 30s.
Yeah, even managed the
Johnny
Angels.
Callison. I mean, all those 1960s Phillies, I have no memory of them. But we did get to see some of them as I got older, like Cookie. Got to see Dick Allen when he was Dick Allen on the second time around. I don't remember Callison even, when he finished his career, like with the White Sox, I believe it was. I really don't remember him as a player ever at all. It surprises me when I look back that Rick Wise, actually, who was a young, developing all-star pitcher when we traded Wise straight up for Carlton. I don't know if you know that much about the history of Wise, but he was an all-star the year before that they made the Carlton trade. So it wasn't like the Phillies were giving up nothing to get Steve Carlton. They were giving up I believe he was a year or two younger than Carlton, and he was coming off his first NL All-Star campaign, and he did end up having a nice career after that. Certainly not a Hall of Fame career, but he had a nice career. But he actually pitched for those 1964 Phillies. It was only, I believe, a handful of games, but it's just crazy to think back that he was, as a teenager, he was pitching for the 1964 Phillies. So, it would be nice to have. I won't say we need to have those days back, Rich. I'm not one of those guys that says, "Oh, everything was so much better in the past." I know there were problems. There were racial problems. There were problems with the finances of the game, inequities, and the like. But just the idea of a baseball season, that any baseball season that we've had in the past that was normal, where we had a normal off season, where we could talk about, free agency, and where we could talk about, who our team might go after, and we could talk about possible trade scenarios that might go on during the off season and the winter meetings. But all of that was overshadowed by the CBA talks. All of that ultimately was flushed down the toilet by the lockout. And then we now we're doing it right now. We've lost, or we're losing our spring training games, our trips. Imagine what's going to happen when they open this game up again, Rich. Just how many free agents there still are.
Yeah.
Are they going to have a Rule 5 draft? I don't know. They didn't have it in December because the game was locked out. And there are trades that are going to be made. I mean, teams are going to be looking at things and deciding on how they want to spend in the new environment in 2022, and they're going to be making deals. So I think, it's going to be insanity, I think, for, say they open up the game a week from now, they have a new CBA, and they say we're going to be playing baseball in the second week of April. Well, that month, that 3 or 4 weeks before that, I think it's going to be crazy, just with players, free agents signing, trades getting done, all while that's going on, trying to get some spring training in. It's going to be a loony period, but I'm looking forward to it. It's anything, because it's real baseball. It's real talk. We'll be getting ready for real games. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's going to be like hot stove on steroids.
Oh, yeah.
So to speak. And speaking of that, this weekend in the Philadelphia area out of King of Prussia, there was a baseball card show called PhilliesShow.com. And, by the time you hear this podcast, it'll be over. But, this seemed like something I would want to go to. And I almost made the trip, but I didn't sign up in advance for autographs or anything like that. But Pete Rose, Mike Schmidt, Steve Carlton, Lonnie Smith, Tim Herr, Greg Jeffries, a lot of Ozzie Virgil from the Phillies, Bob
Yeah,
Boone.
Ryan Howard is going to be there from more recent
Yeah.
players, and one of my all-time favorites, no matter what sport, was going to be there. Bernie Perrant, great guy, Bernie Perrant. I met him a couple of times. Uh, just a great human being, Bernie Perrant.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it looked like it was a big name show there.
yeah, this show ran from March 4th to the 6th over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And of course, we're doing the podcast on Sunday.
It's
But
over, Rich. I'm looking at my clock. It's 3:15 now
yeah,
on
it's
Sunday
over.
afternoon, and it ended at 3 o'clock. So it's over.
It is over, but they do this show a couple times a year. So I believe next time is in the summertime. And then
You got the button down there, upcoming shows maybe.
around Christmas time.
On the bottom here, got some upcoming shows.
Bottom, there we
There
go.
you go.
I knew I saw it somewhere.
There it is, September.
September 23rd to 25th. So mark your calendars now. I'm sure some of these same players will be there, knock on wood, especially with Pete Rose. God, he's umpteen years old. And then December 2 through the 4th. So if you're in that Christmas mode around that time, or, doing some shopping or whatever.
The big question, Rich, is when that show comes in September, will we be playing baseball? Will we be coming down the stretch in the last couple of weeks of the regular season?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, God, our shows from back in the times where we didn't know if there was going to be a season because of COVID is almost like now. But these shows are pretty good, and like you just said, Matt, to meet these players, say hello to them, have them sign an autograph for you. It's a one of a kind place sometimes to see all these players in one place. So make your plans now for September if you're in the Philly area. I don't know if they do this around the country. I would imagine they do, but great number of good players there to sign your goodies and things like that.
And note what you're saying, Rich. All these heroes are players, going out and meeting your heroes and players. Nobody's going out to get John Middleton's autograph. Nobody's going out to get the owner of the New York Yankees, the owner of the Kansas City Royals, the owner of the San Francisco Giants autograph. And nobody wants it and nobody cares. The players are the game. I'm not saying that they need to have half of the $10 billion. I understand that it takes that the owners deserve it for a lot of reasons, for a lot of things that they put into the organization from top to bottom, from minor league facilities to places down in camps down in Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico and that kind of thing, for the infrastructure, for all the employees in the organization that are non-uniformed. I know there's a lot more involved. So I have no problem with the owner of a business. They deserve, you're the owner of the business, you deserve to own most of the money. But the players, that's who the fans care about. The players are who entertain us on an every day, every night basis. That's who we want to see. We want to see the Joel Embiids. We want to see the Ryan Howards. We want to see the Bryce Harpers. We want to see the Bernie Perrants, back in the day. So let's get, there's a fair deal to be had for the players. I believe that they're right in fighting for it and holding out for it as far as coming to a settlement for the CBA. The owners I think are trying to, I think the owners understand that they have to give a little bit. And I think the owners are trying, like any owner probably would, they're trying to hold on as much as they can, of their cash. So the players are fighting for more. The owners are trying not to give up, as much as the players want. And it's, hopefully this little tug of war, at some point you feel like they've got to get to a point on all these varied issues where they say, all right, I don't really want to do that, but I'll do that if you do this. And then they all go, okay, finally they'll say, all right, I think we can live with this. That's where we're trying to get to. And it seems ridiculous that they've allowed it to get this far where it's affecting us, the fans. You could have done this in December. You could have done this in January, and it wouldn't have affected us, the fans, at all. And you could have come to a deal before spring training started, had the CBA in place, and you would have had a normal spring training. Us, the fans, could have traveled down to Florida, made our plans, gone down to have a nice spring trip, so it just was not a lot of concern to me for the fans in this entire process. If there was, you'd have been talking during December and January. So time to get a deal done, Rich,
And to feed off what you were saying with the players, they are not baseball either. Baseball is unto itself. How many decades of different players have we seen come through the halls of baseball and the different teams over the years? Baseball is baseball. Players aren't exactly the game. Don't put yourself ahead of the game, so to speak. As you just said, Matt, the fans are part of it. The players are part of it. The owners are part of it. Yeah. And we're suffering the worst right now, being the fans. So let's see this resolved. It's already the first week of March. We'll try to get another show in by right after probably St. Patrick's Day, but hopefully by the next time you hear us talk, we're going to have a settlement to talk about, and that flurry of trades and activity will be taking place, and we'll be in a much happier place for baseball fans.
Hopefully, Rich. Hopefully we won't be cursing out the Phillies for not spending money and not making trades and not signing players. That'll be the next thing. Once it all opens up again, you watch Twitter, the Phillies will be like, the Phillies should be going after this guy. Why aren't they signing that guy? They should sign this guy.
Yeah.
And then when they don't, it'll be like, oh, they let this guy go. They let that. That's what I want to get back to. Actual talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to this edition of Phillies Talk Podcast. As Matt says, you can find him on Twitter at Phillies Bell.
Don't let the Sixers bell
fool you.
Decorations fool you.
Yeah.
Still can be found at Phillies Bell.
Very cool. And I had to take a double take. I'm waiting for, your daily post to come back on the Phils. And you can find me over at fightingphillies.com, the home of the blog for this podcast, and as well, anchor.fm/Phillies. You can take it upon yourself to sponsor the show. I know I've been calling for sponsors forever. Haven't gotten any, folks. You're not responding to the sponsor call. So you have it in your heart, go over to anchor.fm/Phillies. You can do a little sponsoring there for us. Thanks for tuning in to this edition. We'll see you on the next show.
Let's make a deal, Rich.